What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dojebag Poker Vlogs. Sorry for the weird angle. I have this camera balancing on like a cup because I didn't bring my tripod for some reason. But I'm gonna be in an Airbnb for 2 weeks, this time in LA, and this time we have a special guest.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
George is back, guys. Oh, I forgot to turn off the fan. That's right, guys, we're gonna be playing poker for 2 weeks straight in Los Angeles. If you guys don't remember George, I met him at Aria last year, and he was in a couple of the vlogs. He was even recognized by a viewer while he was in Florida. He's come all the way from England to experience LA poker. Let's wish him luck. On the second day of our trip, we decided to go to the Bicycle Casino, which is where I used to play 1-3. Unfortunately, our first session on day one wasn't in the vlog since it was pretty late and we were both pretty tired, but we had a pretty big loss at Commerce. And unfortunately, this session at the bike wasn't too much better. I basically did not have any interesting hands to share. We do have a couple hands that George played though, so let's get into those. We start off on the flop with this hand. George was the pre-flop aggressor from the hijack, and he got called by the player in the big blind. The flop is 8-4-8 and the pot is around $80-ish. The big blind check calls George's c-bet of 35. The turn card is the 3 of diamonds. The big blind check calls once again. The river comes down the 5 of clubs. 7-6 now makes a straight. The big blind checks again. We still don't know what George has, but he decides to shove here, putting the opponent all in for about $100 effective. The opponent goes into the tank for a while.
Yep.
2-3 seat open. 20. Yeah, I got a player.
Eventually, George gets called and has to show down King-Queen offsuit for a bluff, while his opponent had a gut shot that rivered a pair. Now, keep in mind that I might be misremembering certain sizes in this hand, or like the pot size or stuff like that, but for the most part, it should be correct information. Regardless, it's unfortunate that the bluff didn't go through. For this next hand, I'll actually tell you what George had. He has ace-queen offsuit, which he raised in the cutoff. He was once again the pre-flop aggressor, and he's up against the big blind. The flop comes down queen deuce 4 with 2 clubs. George has top here. The pot's about 60 or so, and George bets 25 after the big blind checks. The big blind makes a call, and when the turn brings the 6 of diamonds, the big blind now decides to lead for $50. George makes the call, and the river comes the 5 of clubs. So there's now 4 to a straight on the board, although a 3 seems kind of unlikely here. The big blind now decides to bet pretty big, making it 175. George thinks for quite a while with his top pair top kicker and eventually makes the call. His opponent shows 7-3 offsuit for a straight. And to top it all off, the opponent said that he had a double gutter on the flop of queen deuce 4, even though he very obviously doesn't. And that's what he used to justify his call on the flop. So, unfortunately, we were very clearly in a good game with a good table, but just couldn't get anything going. We eventually decide to leave, heading to Commerce to see if we can get some better luck, and for this session, I ended up losing $435 in only 2.5 hours. Guys, we just cannot catch a break today or yesterday, and it's embarrassing to say, but we're actually like out of money pretty much, and we need to go to the ATM or the bank because I thought 4K would be enough total to start so that we each have 2K, 4 buy-ins, and then we could just play it by ear, but we are just not running well, and so far we played 2.5 hours and both of us lost a good amount, so yeah, not running.
Fish, in other words.
Yeah, we're fish. After reloading, we get to Commerce around 7 p.m. While I was waiting for a seat, a player at a nearby table said hi to me, and it turns out that he was a viewer. His name was Richard, so sorry that this vlog took so long to come out, and it was nice meeting you. After finally getting a seat, I was card dead for quite a while and had to add on another 100 after initially buying in for 500. For the first interesting hand of this session, I have pocket kings on the button. There are 2 limps to me, and I make it $30. The small blind and the low jack limper call. We're going to a flop 3 ways, and it comes down 10 king 5 with 2 clubs. We have top set here on a fairly wet board. Both of the opponents check to me, and I put out a c-bet of 65 here. I get a call from only the low jack after the small blind gets out of the way. The turn comes the deuce of diamonds, literally the blankest card in the deck, and the low jack checks to me again. I now start thinking about what price would set up for a good SPR on the river, given that we're 380 effective here. But Looking back, and after talking to George about this hand during the day, I realized that that doesn't really matter. When I have a nutted hand here, I don't care about having a normal size SPR on the river. I just want to get the money in and try to figure out how to get as much value as possible. Unfortunately though, at the time, I just decided to overbet shove, which I can't even understand why I would do that, even looking back at my previous self. I think at the time I just thought this opponent was someone who would just call with the flush draw just cuz, but that is a stupid line of thinking. I absolutely could just bet like smallish here, maybe like 100, maybe even less, just to have a very high likelihood of getting some value here. And unfortunately, my opponent folds after tanking for a while, and he later tells George that he did have a flush draw, so absolutely lost value here. I don't like the way I played this hand, but we live and we learn. Later, I pick up pocket fives in the hijack. There's an early position limp. I race to 25, and I get called by the cutoff and the limper. So we're going to a flop three ways, and it comes down 4 deuce 5 with 2 diamonds. We flop top set once again. What a great start to the trip, ignoring the previous 2 sessions. The early position player checks. I bet 25 here, which I would do with a lot of hands. I think a lot of overcards are calling, obviously flush draws, so we want to charge my opponents, especially being multi-way. Both of my opponents end up calling, thankfully, so the turn comes the jack of clubs. I don't even get a chance to continue because the early position player leads out for $100, so just about a 2/3 size pot bet. I think for a while and flat. Absolutely not going to raise here. I want to give the other player a chance to call, and when I raise here, I'm basically just saying I have a set or I have a super strong draw. I want my opponent to value own himself on the river, and if I can get a call from the cutoff, that would be great as well. Unfortunately, the cutoff snap folds, so we're heads up to a river card, and it's the 8 of hearts. We're still almost certainly good here. If he has 6-7, so be it. He leads again this time for $100, which I don't expect he would do with a nutted hand. And I try to think about what size I need to make this raise to get value, obviously. And I just thought raising would look just so strong here. So I went pretty small and made it 270, but it was 420 effective on the river. And I absolutely think this is way too small looking back. I'm giving him such a ridiculous price to call, even though, like I said, it looks so strong when I raise here. I could have easily done like 320, 350 at least. And he quickly calls, indicating to me that I absolutely lost some value here. I show my hand, and of course he mucks, and I take down the pot, but once again, flopping top set and not getting as much value as I could have, this time making a different mistake from the king's one, where I overbet. This time I just raised a bit too small, and if I thought about it more, I could have chosen the right sizing. But that's okay, we're happy to take a win here. And a little bit after this hand, a floorman came over and asked me how long I had been playing at Commerce. He eventually said that he was a viewer and that he had been watching since basically the beginning. His name was Tim, and he said that if I needed anything to let him know, so shout out to Tim, thank you for saying hi. It's really awesome to run into longtime viewers, especially considering I post very infrequently and have a relatively small channel compared to other poker vlogs. Alright guys, enough of flopping top set, it's time for an actual interesting hand, and this one is really good guys. I've got ace-queen offsuit in the cutoff. The player under the gun limps. Action folds to me, and I make it $25. I get called by the small blind and the initial limper in early position. So we're going to a flop 3 ways again, and it comes down deuce ace 3 with 2 clubs. We've got the ace of clubs here as well as top. Loving this flop here, and once the small blind checks, I'm ready to bet if it gets checked to me, but the under the gun limper leads out here for $35. I just call here. If my opponent's bluffing, no need to get him off of it, and I do have the ace of clubs, making me less worried about flush draws here. The small blind gets out of the way. We're heads up to a turn card, which is the 10 of diamonds, adding a second flush draw to the board. All in all though, shouldn't have changed much unless he has ace 10 specifically. When players lead on the flop as the not pre-flop aggressor, they tend to have some kind of like weakish top pair, so that's kind of the range I'm putting him on. So when he bets $100 this time, I have a pretty easy call here. The river comes down an interesting card. It is the 10 of clubs, completing the front door flush, putting a second 10 on the board, and my opponent does not slow down. He jams for his remaining 255, and at the time I didn't like the spot. I tanked for a little while and was worried about being beat, but I think looking back, this is a pretty straightforward call. I have pretty much the best ace possible. My opponent should never have ace king played this way, and the 10 on the river makes it less likely he has ace 10 now. This is probably one of the best hands, if not the best hand, I'm going to play exactly this way, so I think it's a pretty easy snap call, especially given it's not that big of a shove. But I was just worried for a while, and I kind of talked out loud saying, what do you lead on the flop with? Which I kind of just answered already. But anyways, I eventually do make the call, and part of it was because I felt like that this guy was kind of out to get me for whatever reason. It was just kind of the vibe. And he ends up rolling over. Oh, okay. We chop. Yeah. Ace 3 offsuit for a flopped 2 pair. Now guys, it's very obvious on the screen and to all you poker players that his 2 pair got counterfeited and that I am winning in this hand. But being the person I am who worries about being beat, I just saw that he had just an ace and then I said, oh, we chop, in relief, not knowing what was actually going on. So I'm gonna let you guys see how this one plays out.
That goes in your blood, you're in trouble.
Guys, I think I'm in trouble.
265 to top.
It's queen win.
Oh wait, yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, I have the queen plays. Okay, I'm blind.
You have a 2 pair and you have a ace queen.
Yeah.
Why you want to chop? He have a big 2 pair. I didn't see what he even had. I thought he was calling to chop.
Thank you.
It's good for your channel.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Thank you.
45.
Gotta pose a chikorita. I almost folded. No, I think I was gonna call no matter what. I was trying to find a reason to fold, but then this one was a very funny hand for multiple reasons, as you can now see. And yeah, what can I say, guys? Content. Just before 5 a.m., George and I decide that we're gonna play one more orbit before we leave, and I pick up pocket aces in the small blind. We got one last one for you guys. The under the gun and the cutoff players limp. I raise to 25 and I get called by the under the gun player. Action is now on the cutoff and he limp re-raises to 100, leaving 155 behind. Action is on me and I absolutely could shove here given the effective stacks. The under the gun player had around 350 to start the hand, so this definitely wouldn't be a bad shove, but I decide to just flat here to give him the chance to call with a hand he might not otherwise call with. It's a slim chance, but it's there. He unfortunately folds though. We're going to a flop, which is 10-6 queen, rainbow. I check to my opponent here and he shoves. I have a very obvious call here. The run out comes 9 of spades, king of diamonds. Not the nicest run out, but we still could very well be ahead. And my opponent has king jack. We lose to a straight here. This was the same player who I won against with the pocket fives, so he got some revenge. And now I'm wishing I did not play that last orbit. That's going to be it for the commerce session. Let's check out the results. No. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Thank you.
Yeah, so finally booking a win after not running too well. And we are up 85 bucks on the day. Nothing crazy, but we'll take it. I'll end this off with one of the craziest chop hands I've ever seen in my life. The board was 8 queen 4 jack, and 3 players got it all in on the turn for a lot of money, and 2 of them had king 8 and ended up winning. The other player had a flush draw that missed. We were flabbergasted.
I knew nobody had the queen.